So what type of tests out there? There's a whole variety of actual different types of tests that you might be asked to take. Again, not every employer asks you to take a test, and some will have you take multiple types of tests. So it can be really a mixed bag. It also depends on what type of position you're looking for, the type of tests that you might experience. But in this lesson, we're going to go over the different types of tests that are out there just so you're aware. And then later we'll show examples of these different types of exams in the upcoming lesson. And we'll give you some tips on how to maybe do better or do well on these exams or tests and succeed with them or overcome them in some cases as overcoming them. So what types of tests are out there? So here's a list of the different types of categories of tests. And one, and maybe you've run into some of these, is a personality test, right? The idea is they've got to profile whatever the ideal job candidate might be for this particular position, the type of personality they might have, and they really want to fit that personality type with that job description, that person. So maybe if you're a financial analyst, having real detail orientation or analytical ability is very important from a personality standpoint, as opposed to if you're a salesperson. It's important that maybe you're more extroverted and that you're very able to take lots of different people turning you down or telling you no, but also that you're able to influence others. So heavy influence versus maybe being heavy on the analytical side. So you might have a test like one of the famous one is what's called a DISC profile test, where you take the test and after you answer a whole bunch of questions, and I'll give you some examples here coming up, you'll spit out and say you're this type of personality, or this type of thing. So personality tests are very, very common. Also, you might see, especially for entry-level jobs, some basic skills tests. They could vary from just simple math to solving some simple coding exercises, or maybe not so simple coding exercises, depending on your level of expertise. But they're basically giving you these basic skills to show that you know the basics of what to do. So if, let's say Microsoft Excel is important for this job, then you might give you an exam or a basic skills test where it has you create a basic spreadsheet. They give you some data, you create a basic spreadsheet, it might take you 3 minutes. They're just verifying that you have these basic understanding of some basic skills. Next are talent assessment tests. And that's kind of what they're doing. They're assessing your talent, and they're really designed to help predict job performance and retainability. As in, will you stick with the job, or are you going to get in there, find it's not for you, and then quit right away? So that's the idea of trying to do these talent assessments. And they have you answer a whole bunch of different types of questions, and they're really kind of comparing it to a database or things that a company has done for them. Usually you have these external companies that say, well, people answer these variety of usually multiple choice questions in a certain way, have this type of talents and are more likely to do well in certain types of jobs, or certainly be retainable, not leave jobs. And these questions can seem very strange, as far as it might seem like a right answer. And is there a right answer or a wrong answer? Not necessarily. It's more about the talent or more about who you are. So here's this example, we're going to look at this example in a couple different viewpoints. So the example is, the question you might be asked, one of many questions, is on an exam, on an online test, or on something you're taking. It is best to analyze all the facts before making a decision. It is best to analyze all the facts before making a decision. And then you rate how you would react to that question. Do you strongly agree, to strongly disagree, and then there's choices in between. And how would you answer that? Now you might think, well, the obvious answer is sure, I'd certainly want all the facts, and I'd really want to analyze that before I made a decision, so I might say I strongly agree with that. And that might be, for certain positions, that might be the exact type of thing they're looking for, what'll come out from a talent assessment. But in other positions, it might not be. For example, let's say you're interviewing to become a fire captain, for like a firefighter, and you're the captain, you're in charge, you're the person who is on the scene of the fire, and you're directing people to go into the fire or put out the fire and do different things. And there's a woman comes up to you, and this fire is very dangerous, and she's saying, oh my gosh, my baby's inside. Somebody save my baby. But the building is about to collapse. What do? Do you send firefighters in, or do you not? Their lives are at risk too, and you have to make that decision with incomplete facts. It's not like, well, let me spend another hour analyzing it. It'll be all over by that time. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to this. Other tests include things like a cognitive test, looking at your reasoning ability, memory, speed, accuracy, skills in arithmetic or reading, comprehension, just kind of this overall idea of your intelligence, for example. And that most famous one around these types is an intelligence quotient or an IQ test. You've probably heard of IQ tests. It's a cognitive test looking at your overall kind of cognitive ability or thinking ability. Next, there is emotional intelligence testing, or EI, emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, you're really looking at how do people manage their own emotions, how do they stay in control, and how do they understand and relate to the emotions of others. Emotionally intelligent people, the high EI score, are highly emotionally intelligent, have an ability to work well with colleagues, maybe with a variety of different types of colleagues they may work with, interact with the public, handle disappointments or challenges or frustration in mature and professional ways. They have the ability to really control their emotions, and not only just their own emotions, but really understand the emotional impact from others too, and how to relate to those different people. You might know people in different places you've worked where you can say, boy, that person always seems to be in control. They're probably very high in EI or emotional intelligence. And so there's exams that can measure that. Are you going to be in control? Or are you going to lose your mind very quickly? Physical exams, those would be like if you were in a physical demanding job or potentially dangerous jobs, for example, like the firefighter job. You need to climb ladder, you need to be able take a person, put them on your shoulder and drag them down. So a lot of times I'll have you do a physical exam where you climb a ladder. At the top they have a big sack of flour. That might be a 100-pound sack of flour, and you're supposed to put that over your shoulder and bring that sack of flour down. So that would be an exam to show that physically you can do that. You wouldn't have that type of test for like an office position or factory position. It will really only be for, or it really only should be used for something that where the physical parts of the job are so demanding that you need to test for that, like a firefighter, for example. Drug tests, well, that's kind of what they say they are, right? You're taking a test to, see if you're using illegal drugs. So be aware of drug tests, that might be coming up. Language proficiency tests too, like if they're looking for someone who can speak multiple languages, or you're indicating on your resume or on your CV or application that you can speak certain languages, they might give you a proficiency test to see how well you do with that language and use that as an evaluation tool. Particularly if you're looking for something that might be more an international type of job position, or you might be relocating for an international site. And then sample job task tests. I happen to like those because it really kind of proves that somebody can do it. These might be things that are like simulations or work samples or job previews, or you're basically looking at a person's job performance or aptitude on a particular task. You can almost think of it like as an audition, right? That's why, like, actors and actresses, they audition for parts. They want the person looking to fill that part wants to see, well, how good of an actor is this person, and can they really play that part? It's kind of the same thing for every other type of job out there too. If a big part of your job, let's say, is public speaking, I may have somebody say, hey, stand up over there and give me a 2-minute presentation on something. I'll make up something give me a 2-minute presentation on why bears are better than tigers, or why you like bears, or what's your favorite animal. I mean, it doesn't have to be related to the job. I'm really looking to, or it could be, give a presentation on anything topic you want. I'm really looking for their ability. How do they carry themselves? How are they at public speaking? And that's a sample job task, if that is their role, where they need to do public speaking, for example. For an accountant, I might give them, let's say, a spreadsheet and say, look at the spreadsheet and tell me where you think you see some errors. For example, and I've already created the spreadsheet to have errors, so kind of see if they can basically understand and perform the task. And then lastly, a type of tests that are out there and very kind of famous and get kind of a reputation around them is case studies. Particularly see them around in like people looking to do consulting areas, maybe investment banking, certainly some technical type positions, real thought leader stuff, put to positions or leadership positions. And you're really trying to gauge with a case study, the critical thinking and ability to work under pressure. So it actually turns out to be a little bit less about, are you able to solve the case? It's not so much about that. It's looking, the interviewer is looking at your, and the hiring company is looking at your critical thinking ability. And in some cases, they put pressure onto these things just to see how you react. They might get some information from an emotional intelligence type of test, or they also can get this from a case study, for example. And here's some examples on them, and they can seem kind of strange. Like you might be asked a question, well, how many golf balls can fit in a football stadium? Like, what? What does that have to do with anything, let alone the job? I mean, am I in charge of filling stadiums with the golf balls? Of course not. Really, what they're looking for is your critical thinking, right? So they're thinking like, what kind of questions would you ask? Like, if I was asked that question, I'd say, oh, well, it depends. Like, what type of stadium is it? How many seats are in the stadium? Is it a football stadium? Is it a baseball stadium? What type of stadium are we talking about? Is it a big Olympic stadium with a track around it? I mean, there's a process to that. Later on, we're going to learn about how to actually work step by step through a case study process. But I hope you got a little flavor there that it was less about, I don't know, 50,000 is the answer for the golf ball question, and more about critical thinking. Or here's some like, what is the size of the U.S. or U.K. market for helium balloons, or dry cleaners in London, or you might see some things like this, like how much money could Delta Airlines save by giving customers half a can instead of a whole can of Coke? Big deal. And so a lot of times they're just questions like that, or sometimes they provide you with a lot of data, pages and pages of data, and then they will ask you a question that you have to then pull out, critical thinking again, out of that data. Like, what is the break-even point for a company as far as profit and loss? And they'll give you all this data that you can do these calculations with. And there's many other examples. And so to look at your critical thinking, but ability to work under pressure, they may give you, like, for example, this thing with all the data, and then you have to give this answer. They'll intentionally set up so you don't have enough time to do it. And to see how fast you can work and how you can work under pressure, because it's all about how you think critically or pressure. Nobody really cares how many golf balls you can fit into a stadium. So with case studies, and this is from Accenture, some interesting information there, a consulting company, help people develop these kind of case studies. A little bit in here about some myths and facts around case studies. And the myth is that there's a right answer approach to a case. Rarely would that be, but it can happen, but rarely. And really the fact is that there's usually several different approaches and solutions, again, looking at that critical thinking. And that the myth of the interviewer is looking for you to have the right answer, like the golf ball question in the stadium. The interviewer doesn't know. They have no idea what the answer is themselves. What they're looking for is a thoughtful, structured response, again, based on your thinking. And then industry knowledge is required well to do on the case. Well, I don't know if you've been in an industry where you have to figure out this golf ball question, but no, it's not really about that. The interviewer is expecting you to be effective with the knowledge you have, make a hypothesis, and based on sound common sense and business practices maybe, or maybe there's a little bit where you can pull in your industry experience into that, but it's not so much about being an expert in that particular case, whether it's airline industry or filling stadiums with golf balls. So understand these myths and facts around the cases and what they're really looking to. And then when we get into the lesson about cases where it walks you right through how to do those step by step, you'll find that to be very, very effective and helpful. Particularly if you're applying for positions that are using these case studies all the time and they might be tripping up a little bit. We've got something coming up that's going to help you in a great deal, a nice little framework that'll help you with that.